Welcome, soul. Take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let the noise of the world fade away for a little while. Even a grim reaper knows the value of a quiet moment. So settle in, relax, and let me guide you through today's story. A herdsman tending his flock in a forest lost a bull calf from the fold. After a long and fruitless search, he made a vow that if he could only discover the thief who had stolen the calf, he would offer a lamb in sacrifice to Hermes, Pan, and the guardian deities of the forest. Not long afterwards, as he ascended a small hillock, he saw, at its foot, a lion feeding on the calf. Terrified at the sight, he lifted his eyes and his hands to heaven and said, "Just now I vowed to offer a lamb to the guardian deities of the forest, if I could only find out who had robbed me. But now that I have discovered the thief, I would willingly add a full-grown bull to the calf I have lost, if I may only secure my own escape from him in safety." A young fawn once said to his mother, "You are larger than a dog, and swifter, and more used to running. You have your horns as a defense. Why then, O mother, do hounds frighten you so?" She smiled and said, "I know full well, my son, that all you say is true. I have the advantages you mention, but when I hear even a bark of a single dog, I feel ready to faint and fly away as fast as I can. No arguments will give courage to the coward." The ass and the fox, having entered into a partnership together for their mutual protection, went out into the forest to hunt. They had not proceeded far when they met a lion. The fox, seeing imminent danger, approached the lion and promised to contrive him the capture of the ass if the lion would pledge his word not to harm the fox. Then, upon assuring the ass that he would not be injured, the fox led him to a deep pit and arranged that he should fall into it. The lion, seeing that the ass was secured, immediately clutched the fox and attacked the ass at his leisure. A number of flies were attracted to a jar of honey which had been overturned in a housekeeper's room, and placing their feet in it, ate greedily. Their feet, however, became so smeared with honey that they could not use their wings, nor release themselves, and were suffocated. Just as they were expiring, they exclaimed, "O foolish creatures that we are! For the sake of a little pleasure, we have destroyed ourselves. Pleasure bought with pain hurts." One winter, a farmer found a snake stiff and frozen with cold. He had compassion on it, and taking it up, placed it in his bosom. The snake was quickly revived by the warmth, and resuming its natural instincts, bit its benefactor, inflicting on him a mortal wound. "Oh," cried the farmer, with his last breath, "I am rightly served for pitying such a scoundrel. The greatest kindness will not bind the ungrateful." A man and a lion traveled together through the forest. They soon began to boast of their respective superiority to each other in strength and prowess. As they were disputing, they passed a statue carved in stone, which represented a lion strangled by a man. The traveler pointed to it and said, "See there? See how strong we are, and how we prevail over even the king of beasts." The lion replied, "This statue was made by one of you men. If we lions knew how to erect statues, you would see man placed under the paw of the lion. One story is good, till another is told. The pomegranate and apple tree disputed as to which was the most beautiful. When their strife was at its height, a bramble from the neighboring hedge lifted up its voice and said in a boastful tone, "Pray, my dear friends, in my presence, at least cease from such vain disputings." A farmer placed nets on his newly sown plowlands and caught a number of cranes, which came to pick up his seed. With them he trapped a stork that had fractured his leg in the net and was earnestly beseeching the farmer to spare his life. "Pray, save me, master," he said, "and let me go free this once. My broken limb should excite your pity. Besides, I am no crane. I am a stork, a bird of excellent character, and see how I love and slave for my father and mother. Look, too, at my feathers. They are not the least like those of a crane." The farmer laughed aloud and said, "It may be all as you say. I only know this: I have taken you with these robbers, the cranes, and you must die in their company. Birds of a feather flock together." A tortoise, lazily basking in the sun, complained to the seabirds of her hard fate, that no one would teach her to fly. An eagle, hovering near, heard her lamentation and demanded what reward she would give him if he would take her aloft and float her in the air. "I will give you," she said, "all of the riches of the Red Sea." "I will teach you to fly then," said the eagle, and taking her up in his talons, he carried her almost to the clouds. Suddenly he let her go, and she fell on a lofty mountain, dashing her shell to pieces. The tortoise exclaimed in the moment of death, "I have deserved my present fate, for what had I to do with wings and clouds, who can with difficulty move about on the earth? If men had all they wished, they would be often ruined." A fox one day fell into a deep well and could find no means of escape. A goat, overcome with thirst, came to the same well, and seeing the fox, inquired if the water was good. Concealing his sad plight under a merry guise, the fox indulged in a lavish praise of the water, saying it was excellent beyond measure, and encouraging him to descend. The goat, mindful only of his thirst, thoughtlessly jumped down. But just as he drank, the fox informed him of the difficulty they were both in and suggested a scheme for their common escape. "If," he said, "you will place your forefeet upon the wall and bend your head, I will run up your back and escape, and I will help you out afterwards." The goat readily assented, and the fox leaped upon his back, steadying himself with the goat's horns. He safely reached the mouth of the well and made off as fast as he could. When the goat upbraided him for breaking his promise, he turned around and cried out, "You foolish old fellow! If you had as many brains in your head as you have hairs in your beard, you would have never gone down before you had inspected the way up, nor have exposed yourself to dangers from which you had no means of escape. Look before you leap." A bear boasted very much of his philanthropy, saying that of all animals he was the most tender in his regard for man, for he had such respect for him that he would not even touch his dead body. A fox, Hearing these words, said with a smile to the bear, "Oh, that you would eat the dead and not the living." A mountain was once greatly agitated. Loud groans and noises were heard, and crowds of people came from all parts to see what was the matter. While they were assembled in anxious expectation of some terrible calamity, out came a mouse. Don't make much ado about nothing. A raven saw a swan and desired to secure for himself the same beautiful plumage, supposing that the swan's splendid white color arose from his washing in the water in which he swam. The raven left the altars in the neighborhood where he picked up his living and took up residence in the lakes and pools, but cleansing his feathers as often as he would, he could not change their color, while through want of food he perished. Change of habit cannot alter nature. A pigeon, oppressed by excessive thirst, saw a goblet of water painted on a signboard. Not supposing it to be only a picture, she flew towards it with a loud whir, and unwittingly dashed against the signboard, jarring herself terribly. Having broken her wings by the blow, she fell to the ground and was caught by one of the bystanders. Zeal should not outrun discretion. A dog lay in a manger, and by his growling and snapping prevented the oxen from eating the hay which had been placed for them. "What a selfish dog," said one of them to his companions. "He cannot eat the hay himself, and yet refuses to allow those to eat who can." A heavy wagon was being dragged along a country lane by a team of oxen. The axle-trees groaned and creaked terribly, whereupon the oxen, turning round, thus addressed the wheels: "Hello there! Why do you make so much noise? We bear all the labor, and we, not you, ought to cry out. Those who suffer the most cry out the least." A lion, unable from old age and infirmities to provide himself with food by force, resolved to do so by artifice. He returned to his den, and lying down there, pretended to be sick. Taking care that his sickness should be publicly known, the beasts expressed their sorrow, and came by one to his den, where the lion devoured them. After many of the beasts had thus disappeared, the fox discovered the trick, presenting himself to the lion, stood on the outside of the cave, at a respectful distance, and asked him how he was. "I am very middling," replied the lion, "but why do you stand without? Pray, enter within to talk with me." "No, thank you," said the fox. "I notice that there are many prints of feet entering your cave, but I see no trace of any returning. He is wise who is warned by the misfortunes of others." Some cranes made their feeding grounds on some plowlands, newly sown with wheat. For a long time the farmer, brandishing an empty sling, chased them away by the terror he inspired. But when the birds found that the sling was only swung in the air, they ceased to take any notice of it and would not move. The farmer, on seeing this, charged his sling with stones and killed a great number. The remaining birds at once forsook his fields, crying to each other, "It is time for us to be off to Lilliput, for this man is no longer content to scare us, but begins to show us in earnest what he can do. If words suffice not, blows must follow." And so our journey comes to an end. I hope this story brought you a little peace, or at least a quiet moment away from the noise of the world. Thank you for spending this time with me, soul. Until our paths cross again, take care of yourself. And remember to be kind to the one you see in the mirror. Rest well, and I'll be here whenever you're ready for another story.